We continue now at the top of Daf Yodalet Amud Aleph and Meseches Yoma. This is Yoma Daf 14a. On the previous Amud, the Gemara had brought a brisa which said that if a Kohen Gadol is an onen, he can bring karbanos, but he shouldn't eat. And Rabbi Yehuda said Kol Hayom, and the question is, what did it mean Kol Hayom? So the Gemara now says Lomar. What it means is to say as follows: She'eno oved Kol Hayom. That even though the Kohen Gadol technically he can do avoda as an onen, he shouldn't do avoda throughout the entire day. Gezeira shemayocha, because we have a gezeira, there's a decree that maybe he's going to accidentally end up eating from the karbanos, which is certainly not allowed. Rashi over here explains, Lomar she'eno oved kol hayom means to say he shouldn't serve all day ad halayla. Rashi says meaning until the evening. At night, the Kohen Gadol, even though he's an onen, he is allowed to serve. Aval belayla in bala haktir chalavim ve'emurim yaktir. In the evening, at night, if he wants to burn the chalavim and the emurim, so then he's allowed to do that. Rashi explains that during the day of Aninos, it's asur midoraisa for him to eat from kachim. But if you have a situation where the mace was already buried during the day, and now he's in what's called Aninos halayla, eina midivrei Torah ela midivrei sofrim. That's not the oraisa. That's only the rabbanon. V'hachi shaminon leila Rabbi Yehuda b'Meseches Zvachim. That's what Rabbi Yehuda says in Meseches Zvachim. V'hachi kamar Rabbi Yehuda kol hayom hu ba'aninos v'lo yakrev. And that's what Rabbi Yehuda is saying over here, is during the daytime hours before the mace is buried. So then we have a gezeira. Maybe you're going to eat kachim, but at night it's not going to be a problem. So the Gemara continues, Amar le Rav Ada bar Ava l'Rava. Rav Ada bar Ava says to Rava, Umi gozer Rabbi Yehuda shema yochal. Does Rabbi Yehuda really make a gezeira that maybe you're going to come to eat inadvertently? V'atnan, but we learned in our Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Yehuda says, Afisha acheres maskinin lo shema tamas ishto. It says again, we prepare a second wife for the Kohen Gadol, maybe his first wife is going to die. So the Gemara now says, V'maisa ishto, it sounds like if the first wife dies, Avid Avoda. The Kohen Gadol does do the Avoda on Yom Kippur. V'lo gozer Rabbi Yehuda shema yochal. And Rabbi Yehuda is not making a gezeira that he might eat from the karbanos, even though he's an onen. It's exactly the same situation. His first wife died, he's an onen. We should make a gezeira he might eat. So the Gemara says, Omar Lei said to him, Hachi Ashta, what kind of comparison are you making over here to Yom Kippur? Hasam Kaven to Yom Kippurim, who over there, where it's Yom Kippur, the Kuli Alma Lo Ka'achli. Nobody's eating on Yom Kippur. You fast on Yom Kippur. So Hunami Lo Asi Lamechal. So he also, as an onen, he's not going to come to eat. Hacha de Kuli Alma Achli. But here in a situation, just a regular Kohen Gadol who's an onen, where everybody else is eating, Hunami Asi Lamechal. So therefore, he also might come to eat, and that's why again Rabbi Yehuda makes a gezeira. Kohen Gadol shouldn't serve during the day of Aninos. Gemara says, one second. Even if the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, even if his wife dies, he's not going to be an onen anyway. We already said on the previous daf that there's going to be a divorce. And Rashi over here says, now that's what we said earlier. If he sees that she's going to die, he goes into the shul. He made a condition over there that the divorce will work retroactively if he enters the Beis HaKnesses. He'll make it a get retroactively for the wife. That's what we said in the previous daf. So what even is the issue on Yom Kippur if she dies? They're divorced anyway. So the Gemara says, Nihida aninos lo chayla. Granted, it's true, there won't be any real aninos because they're no longer married, but atarude milo mitra, do you not think that he's going to be consumed by this? Rashi over here explains, Milo Mitra, isn't he going to be burdened? Uvekachim ba'in on simcha gedula. When it comes to kachim, you need to be in a state of simcha. We have to eat the way kings eat. That's not going to be possible. So there still would be the concern of eating from the kachim in such a situation. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Kol Shivas Hayomim, all 7 days that the Kohen Gadol is separated before Yom Kippur, Hu Zorek es Adam, he sprinkles the blood of the Karban Tamid, Umakter Sakatores, he brings the Ketores, Umeitev es Haneros, he prepares the candles of the menorah, Umakrev es Harosh v'es Haregel, he brings the head and the regel again of the Karban Tamid, Ushar Kol Hayomim, but other days, meaning not the 7 days of separation, Imrotz lahakrev makrev, if he wants to bring, he's allowed to bring. He has the right. Shekohen Gadol makrev chelik barosh, because the Kohen Gadol gets first in terms of offering the karbanos, v'notel chelik barosh, and he can also take from the first portion. And Rashi over here explains, Huzorek es Adam, he sprinkles the blood shel tamidin of the Karban Tamid, kedei sheyeh rogel umezumin ba'avodas Yom Kippurim. Rashi explains the reason why he's doing this in the 7 days of separation before Yom Kippur is because he needs to get accustomed to doing avodah in the Beis HaMikdash so that he'll be prepared to do the avodah on Yom Kippur. Umeitav Haneros means midashnan min efer hapsilos shekavu. Meitav Haneros means that there were ashes in the candles from overnight, and every morning they would clear out the ashes. V'chein kol yom v'yom etivin baboker. Every morning they did this. Shenemar baboker behetivu haneros v'chol yom maktir ketores. Also every day they would bring ketores behechel in the hechel pras b'shachris upras ben arbaim. Half of it was brought in the morning, half of it was brought in the evening. And other days, when it wasn't the 7 days, if he wanted to bring any carbon he wanted, he could. The mishmor, the shift that was on and working in the Beis HaMikdash couldn't prevent him from doing the avoda if he wanted to. Whatever portion that he wants to offer, he's allowed to. If they're dividing up and they're eating from the kachim, he can take first portion. Barosh means mana yafa sheyivchar lo, meaning he can choose whatever best portion he wants to choose for himself. And the Gemara says, Man Tana, who is the author of our Mishnah? Amar Rav Chisda says, Delo Rabbi Akiva. Our Mishnah does not follow Rabbi Akiva. Do Rabbi Akiva, because if it followed Rabbi Akiva, Ha'amar, but Rabbi Akiva says, Tar shenafla olav hazah timaso. Let's say somebody is tar and they sprinkle him with the mechatos. The mechatos were generally used to purify someone who's tamei mace. Now the Kohen Gadol, in his separation before Yom Kippur, we said earlier, they would sprinkle him with the mechatos just in case he was tamei mace. But Rabbi Akiva holds that if somebody is not tamei mace, if somebody is tar and they sprinkle him with the mechatos, it actually makes the person tamei. And if the Kohen Gadol is tamei, then he's not going to be able to do any service in the Beis HaMikdash. So that's why the Mishnah cannot follow Rabbi Akiva, because our Mishnah says that the Kohen Gadol does do service in the Beis HaMikdash during the 7 days of separation. So that's what it says over here. Hechi Ovid Avoda. If according to Rabbi Akiva that a tar where is sprinkled he becomes tamei, so then how does he do the Avoda? So that's why the Mishnah cannot be Rabbi Akiva, and the Gemara now brings the Braisa, which brings Rabbi Akiva's opinion. The Tanya, as we learned in a Braisa. Vihiza hatar al hatame. It says in the pasuk when it talks about the mechatos, the pure will sprinkle upon the impure, meaning the pure Kohen sprinkles the mechatos on the person who's tamei in order to purify him. So Rabbi Akiva says, Al hatame tahor v'al hatar tamei. The person who you sprinkle on, if he's tamei, he becomes pure. But if the person is tahor, he actually becomes tamei. That's why it says, V'hiza hatar al hatame. If you're sprinkling on someone who is tamei, he becomes pure. But if he's not tamei, he actually becomes impure. Divrei Rabbi Akiva. That's Rabbi Akiva's opinion. The Chachamim say, Ein hadvarim halalu amurin ela b'dvarim hamakablim tuma. What we mean over here has nothing to do with that. We're talking about the fact that it's only called a hazah if you sprinkle it on somebody or on something that's makabel tuma, as the Gemara will now explain. Mahi, what exactly do the Chachamim mean that it's only called a hazah if it's on something that's makabel tuma? Kiditanan, as we learned in the Mishnah. Let's say a person takes the mechatos and he meant to sprinkle it on an animal. Now, an animal is not impure. That would not be a proper hazah. However, v'hizo al adam, he ends up sprinkling it on a person who obviously could be tamei. So, im yesh be'ezov yeshana. If on the hyssop, which you're using to sprinkle the mechatos, there's some other remaining mechatos, you can use that a second time, meaning you haven't pasoled the mechatos. You haven't done an improper hazah because you sprinkled it on a person. A person is in theory makabel tumah. Therefore, it's not considered an improper hazah. But on the other hand, niskavein lahazas ala adam. Let's say a person had intention to sprinkle the mechatas on a person, v'hiz ala behema, and now he does the hazah instead on an animal. So im yesh be'ezov, if there's extra remaining mechatas on the hyssop, lo yeshana, shouldn't sprinkle again, because what he just did is a hazah that's not a hazah. You're doing it on something that's not mekabel tumah, and therefore you can't use that anymore. You've now disqualified the mechatas to be used a second time. Gemara now says, my time with Rabbi Akiva. What's the reason of Rabbi Akiva? Nichtov Rachmana v'hiza hatar olav. It could have just said he sprinkles on him. Ma'al hatame. Why does it say he sprinkles on the impure person? Shmami. No, we learn from this al hatame tar ve'al hatar tame. That on the impure becomes pure, but if you sprinkle on the pure, it actually is the opposite. He becomes impure. The Rabbanan say no. It's for what we wanted to learn the drasha for. Meaning again, you have to sprinkle on those which are makabel tumah. Aval hacha, but over here in your case, Rabbi Akiva, kal v'chomer, on the contrary, it's the kal v'chomer the opposite. If the mechatas can purify someone that's tamei, alatar lo kal shekain, certainly someone who's already pure is going to remain pure. It doesn't make any sense to say that someone is sprinkled with the mechatas, which are purifying waters, should now become impure. For Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Akiva will respond to the Chachamim, Hainu dekamar Shlomo, that's exactly what Shlomo meant when he said, Amarti echkema v'hi rechoka mimeni. I want it to be wise, but it's distant from me, meaning true. It's a halacha that it's difficult to understand. How could the mechatos purify some people and make others impure? For Rabbanan, now the Rabbanan say, you know what Shlomo Melech was talking about? Hahu lemaza ulemazin olav tahor v'nogeya bohen tameh. Rabbanan say that's a different halacha which is difficult to understand. The one who sprinkles and the one who sprinkled upon is tahor, but if you touch the mechatos, you're tameh. That's a difficult to understand halacha. That's what Shlomo Melech was referring to. Gemara now takes a parenthetical question. Umazeh tahor, is it really true that the one who sprinkles is tahor? V'aksiv, the pasuk says the exact opposite. The pasuk says umazeh mehanidu yechabis begadav. It says the one who sprinkles the mechatos has to wash his clothing. He's impure. So the Gemara says, according to the Rabbanan, my mazeh nogeya. What does it mean mazeh? It means one who touches. Gemara says that doesn't make sense either. V'aksiv mazeh, v'aksiv nogeya. The pasuk talks about a mazeh, but it also mentions a nogeya. So clearly they're two different people. Sounds like the mazeh does become tameh. V'od mazeh boy kibus begadim, nogeya lo boy kibus begadim. Furthermore, even if you'll say it means the same thing, it can't be that it means the same thing, because by mazeh the pasuk says you have to wash the clothing, and by nogeya, by touching the mechatos, it doesn't say you have to wash the clothing. So clearly there are two different categories. There's a nogeya of the mechatos, and there's a mazeh of the mechatos. So the Gemara says, Ela mazeh no say. Rather, you know what the pasuk means according to the Chachamim? When it says the one who sprinkles becomes tameh, it means the one who carries it becomes tameh. Gemara says, V'nichtov rachmana no say. So the pasuk should just say no say. Why does it say mazeh? My time ksiv mazeh. Why does it say mazeh? Hakamash malon. So the Gemara says that comes to teach us the ba'inon shir hazah. The amount you have to carry is the amount that you use for sprinkling. So the Gemara says, that all works out according to the one who says that the sprinkling requires there's a minimum amount. You have to sprinkle, there's a shear. But according to the one who says there's no minimum shear when it comes to hazah, again, why are we using the word mazeh for no say? What does it come to teach us? So the Gemara says, Afilu l'mandamar hazah in tzricha shir, even according to the one who says that hazah does not require a minimum shir, hani mili agava de gaver, that refers to the amount you sprinkle on the back of the person, there's no shir. Aval b'mona tzricha shir, but in the kli, which holds the mechatos, there is a minimum shir. The Tanan, as we learned in a Mishnah, kama yehei bahen, how much has to be in there, v'yehei kedei hazah, that it should be enough to do the sprinkling, kedei sheyitval, it has to be enough that you can dip, and we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Yodal Amud Beis.